Okay, and will Agang continue to exist? Is that what you're hoping in the end?
It's not what we are hoping. Agang exists now, an army's leader, and when you get into a relationship, both parties have to shift from being the old self to a new self. And that we are doing in the interests of South Africa, so that South Africa can begin to live beyond the politics of identity, which have trapped us into voting for a party that in no other democracy would vote for a party like the ANC today, which has had 20 years to be able to realize the dreams of our freedom. But instead, we see more corruption, more impunity, more incompetence, and total disregard of the intelligence of ordinary people. That we are told that people just drop the president's name and out comes the Guptas out of aeroplanes. The people decide to build a fire pool and suddenly you have a huge swimming pool in a rural environment where people don't have enough water. We have to put a stop to the culture of impunity, of corruption that the ANC has become.
Okay. Getting back to the talks that you mentioned, you were here about 2 weeks ago, and you very much were defending Agang in terms of its finances, everything. And there was no indication that this was going to happen. How long have you been in talks with the DA, and what made you make that final decision to actually formalize this?
I wasn't here to defend Agang and his finances. I was here to state the fact that Agang has assets, and those assets are his volunteers. And those have to be celebrated because these are ordinary South Africans, because they are so tired of corruption that they've given of their time, their resources to mobilize across South Africa. The issue of cash flow is a problem for every startup everywhere in the world. Even President Obama's campaign had cash flow problems. What we are talking about now is the culmination of something which I've been talking about from the day Agang was announced at the women's prison in Johannesburg last year. We, as Agang founders, committed to working with other political parties to consolidate opposition politics so that we can have a stronger opposition, a more effective machine to be able to effect the electoral changes that this country so badly needs. So that commitment was translated into ongoing talks with the DA, talks with the UDM and COPE, and the DA talks have landed now with this result. We have been very consistent in terms of our view that the DA is a beautiful machine, is headed by someone who's a friend of mine, someone who has been a colleague of mine, but at the end of the day, given the politics of identity in this country, we need to find a better way of working together so we can signal to South Africa that apartheid is truly dead and buried.
Okay, but getting back to the volunteers, I mean, you said they're the biggest asset. Now, were they consulted in the negotiations?
I don't know of negotiations that are conducted in a way that at every point you consult. People knew that we were in these discussions. The question of the announcement was not consulted with the ordinary members of Agang, but we had a discussion with the leadership. It always is painful to make that call between how open do you negotiate and at what point you let the rest of the institution know. And now we're spending the rest of this week and next week making sure that every valued Agang volunteer feels that they understand the logic, make their comments, because this is simply an intention to work together. There's still a lot of room for members of Agang to shape how that working together emerges and how we do it in a way that is in the best interest of the country.
Okay. How would you explain to people, both volunteers and people who were going to vote for Agang, who perhaps feel betrayed by your decision to stand for the DA? What will you say to them?
I want to remind them that when Mandela was negotiating with none other than the National Party, people called him a betrayer. He had to ask to be put in solitary confinement so that he could be able to continue the negotiations. I'm not making history. History is littered with examples where leaders take risks and engage in discussions in the interest of the future that puts them at risk in the short term. But today, no one talks about the fact that Mandela actually didn't get permission from the ANC to negotiate with the National Party. Nor did he cave in when he insisted on a government of national unity, which a lot of people in the ANC opposed. He stood his ground because he understood the imperatives of history. And that's where we are. We have to make the kind of decisions that our children and grandchildren, when they look back, they may say, that was tough, but it was the right decision. Particularly in my case, I have no ambition to be someone in this or that position. I'm merely doing this because it's important for the future of this country to break free from the stranglehold of identity politics, which allows citizens who are educated to keep voting for a corrupt government in the interest of it's our government. It can't be our government which steals from the people. It can't be our government where children fall into pit toilets. What kind of country is that? That I'm ashamed as a citizen of South Africa to live in a country where we can tolerate the death of children in pit toilets in the name of identity politics. It's time for South Africans to rise to the greatness that is us. When we stand up, we often do amazing things. This is the time to do that.